Then he says in verse 15, you do not steal. And there's stealing can take place in many ways, shapes, or forms. There can be a deliberate steal. There can be times where people manipulate you to take from you. This is stealing. Times where people will manipulate Scripture to take money from you when it is unlawful. And something I want you to think, those of you who are listening to my voice, have you noticed that the Sunday churches will take 10% from you, even though the commandments in the Torah, not even in the 10 commandments, but in the Torah, tell us that we only give our 10% to the Levites and to the widows and the orphans, and then there were feasts that we would bring our 10% to, that we growed every 3 years. But there's never an instance where we gave money to some pastor. However, they will tell you to do this part of the law, because it's not in the New Testament. However, they will tell you to break the Sabbath day. The Sabbath isn't Sunday. And even if the Christians think that the Sabbath is Sunday, they still break it for the most part. Go to Walmart on Sunday about 1 o'clock. Go to any restaurant about 1 o'clock. They'll be all dressed up, all, good looking, trimmed up real nice, looking like they're going to have a big time, spending all kinds of money. Let's have a big time today. Okay? No, Yahuwah says don't do your own will. You don't do your own will on the Sabbath day. You rest in me. That's what he's saying. It's so twisted. The 10 Commandments have been so twisted. And then in verse 16 he says, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet your neighbor's house. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. You don't covet your neighbor's house. You don't covet your neighbor's wife, or his car, or his job, or his luxuries, the things that he owns, his TVs, his computers, all these modern things. You don't covet in your heart, because these things, the coveting in your heart, will manifest itself in greater sins. Coveting is equivalent to lust. You are lusting over these things. Okay? And these are the 10 Commandments. This is what is given. Okay? The first 4 commandments are how we love Yahuwah. Because when Yahushua came, I hear so many people say, well, when Yahushua was asked what's the greatest commandment, he said, hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah, your God, Yahuwah is one. You shall love him with your heart, soul, and mind. And the other one is like it, that you should love your brother as yourself. Well, guess what? The first 4 commandments tell us how we love Yahuwah. He tells us, I am Yahuwah your Elohim. So he's saying, I want you to know who I am. He's saying, don't put anybody else before me. I'm your mighty one. Don't make for yourself anything out of stone or anything out of wood. Don't bow down to it. Don't serve it. I'm a jealous El. But I share my kindness with thousands of those who love me and keep my commands. And then he says yet again, don't take my name in vain. So he reveals his name and he says, don't take it in vain. Don't cover it up. Don't twist your tongue when you see it. Say it, but reverence it. Love it. Cherish it. Okay, is what he's revealing here. And then he says, remember the Sabbath day. And he goes into great length, the greatest length of all on the Sabbath day. Okay? Yeah, and his name is revealed also within the context of the Sabbath day. But then when we get to the commandments about honoring your father and mother and not stealing and these things, these 6 commandments, the latter 6, are how we love our brothers, how we love our family, how we love each other as ourselves. These things are what he's saying. So when he says on these 2 commandments hang all the Torah and the prophets, Christians are like, oh, that's it. He gave us just 2 commandments. We love God. They don't even know his name, which is violation of what he's saying, because he says, love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your might, with all your heart, soul, and might. And this is the Shema. Shema Yisrael. Yahuwah Eloheinu. Yahuwah Echad. Yahuwah is one. So this is the commandment. It's in the Old Testament. It's in the Torah. We know that his name was there. We know that Messiah came and manifested his name. So we know there that he said that you love Yahuwah with all your heart, soul, and mind. You don't love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. You don't love Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. But you love Yahuwah with all your heart, soul, and mind. And then he says you love your brothers as yourself. And on these hang the Torah and the prophets. What he's saying is, this is what all the Torah and the prophets are about. How you love Elohim, Yahuwah. How you keep his commandments. How you offer up a righteous sacrifice in His eyes. How you offer up love. How you worship Him, because you can't worship Yahuwah in any way that you want to. You can't just offer it up in any way you want to. Read the scriptures. People died for doing things like that. Okay? It's an abomination. If it was an abomination then, and the Christians say that He is a God that does not change, they're right. Yahuwah is a mighty one that does not change. If you call it an abomination then, it's an abomination now. And then, just so you understand the context of what's happening, and we're going to read verse 18, and it says, "And all the people saw the thunders, the lightning flashes, the sound of the ram's horn, and the mountain smoking. And the people saw it, and they trembled, and stood at a distance, and said to Moshe, You speak with us, and we hear. But let not Elohim speak with us, lest we die. And Moshe said to the people, Do not fear, for Elohim has come to prove you, and in order that His fear be before you, so that you do not sin." So right there we see why the Ten Commandments were delivered. To put fear in the people's hearts, so they would not sin. He didn't want you to sin against His covenant. Jeremiah 31 and verse 31. We read about the new covenant that Yahuwah is providing for His people. And let's see, in Jeremiah 31:31, he says, "See, the days are coming, declares Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Yisrael, with the house of Yehudah. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim, my covenant which they broke." Remember when Moshe came down, he broke the Ten Commandments because they had already broken them before they even received them. "The covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahuwah. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Yisrael. Those days, declares Yahuwah, I shall put my Torah," His law, His instructions. Guess what? The same instructions, the word Torah is law, "in their inward parts, and write it on their hearts. And I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall they teach each other, one his neighbor and the other one his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah. For they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahuwah. For I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sin no more." And he says right here, there's going to be no need. When I write my Torah in your hearts, there's going to be no need for you to say to anyone else to know Yahuwah, for they all know me. Why is that? Because the first covenant, the first commandment that He gives us in the Ten Commandments, that He wrote with His own finger in stone, is I am Yahuwah. We know that He gives the Torah because He says, I give this Torah because I want you to fear my name, to learn to fear my name. It's the greatest revelation of all Scripture, is the name of Yahuwah. Because within Yahuwah's name there's salvation and there's a promise of life. If we would just grab on His new covenant. Because He is establishing His new covenant. He's already established it through the shed blood of His Son. But the day that we are having the fulfillment right before our eyes, that there's going to be no need of those who are of the tribes of Yisrael, whether they be sojourner or whether they be the actual blood, because Yahuwah, it does not make distinction when He brings you into His covenant of promise and loving His name. If you will study out the Scriptures, it says many times to the sojourners and to those who love my name that they are not cut off from my people, okay? So He's saying to all those who are truly striving for the mighty one of Yisrael, that He will make that no one will ever have to make Him known to you. They will not have to say, Know Yahuwah, because they will all know Him from the least to the greatest. Because friends and family, though you may have missed it time and time again as you're reading in your English Scriptures, the first commandment within the 10 is, I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other mighty ones before my face.